I came into TJPW's Tokyo Joshi Pro 26 looking forward to a good show, and I expected the show to at least stay consistent, even if it may or perhaps end up with a full recommendation. Now, I watched this show match by match, so in this review I'm going to break down where the show delivered, where the show dragged, and why the main event may deserve or maybe not deserve the praise that it's gotten. Chika Nanase and Yuta Takami versus Rin Konatsu and Shion Kanzaki was better than I expected, and the effort from all four women made the opener feel like it had a point here. I thought the match stayed simple in a good way, with clean timing and a structure that let the teamwork land here. I thought the pacing climbed without rushing through the transitions here, and the back and forth made the minutes feel earned instead of filled up. I pretty much liked that the match never got sloppy in certain parts either, while I was trying to raise the tempo up, because that is usually where an opener can lose itself. It wasn't a match that tried to be bigger than it needed to be, and it helped it feel steady from start to finish. So at 3 stars, it came off like a good opener that over-delivered on effort and structure. HIMAWARI and Kira Summer vs. Toga and Yuna Manase I thought dragged here, and once the match fell into that pace, it never found a clean out with this. The structure kept looping into the same timing without a stronger sequence to change the direction here. So the going through the motions feeling pretty much stayed on everything here. I was pretty much waiting for this to end, to be completely honest, and that feeling grew because the match never created a real momentum swing that made the next minute feel different than the last. Now, a tag match can be simple, but a tag match still needs a push and a pull that builds towards a finish. And this match in particular never stacked its minutes into some type of climb here. The finish didn't change the overall impression here either. So at 1 3/4 stars, it ended up below average and still stuck in that drag. Maria Kiryu vs. Aja Kong vs. Rika Tatsumi vs. Shino Suzuki for the DDT Iron Man Heavy Metal title was pretty much a blah match, as expected. And the 4-way layout never turned to a build I really cared for to follow. Now, the title ladle in some way should bring urgency, but it's the Iron Man title. And the timing pretty much stayed loose, and the match pretty much did not stick into a certain momentum here. Now, with a 4-way, it needs some type of handoffs that are somewhat sharp in certain ways, and it needs to have a clear direction. And to nobody's surprise, this match never found a stretch that felt like it was climbing towards anything specific here. Instead, it stayed on one level, and the action just didn't create a payoff that would change the tone here. Now, for TJPW standards, maybe you may think differently here, but by more minutes being behind, it just wasn't it for me. So at 1 1/4 stars, it played like a bad match that stayed blah the whole entire way. Shoko Nakajima vs. Hyper Misao in the TJPW Uma Princess Cup was pretty much just a segment, to nobody's surprise. So pretty much if you're into TJPW and you like this type of stuff, you may like it. As someone like myself who can follow it or may not like it depending on how they do it, that's just not my type of stuff. So for this, pretty much an NA, just a segment. Kaya Toribami and Miyu Yamashita vs. J-Rod and Mifu Ashida wasn't much of anything here, and the match never found a stretch that felt like it was building towards a particular payoff here either. The tag structure here stayed thin here, and the timing never shifted into a strong second gear, and the rhythm for me stayed flat from start to finish. Miyu Yamashita is a name that can drive direction in a certain match, but the sequences here didn't really stack into a middle stretch that felt sharper than the opening. I pretty much just kept waiting for a turn where the match would lock in and give the minutes some purpose, and that never really arrived here. And when the work stays that even, the finish doesn't feel like a real climax either. So at 1 3/4 stars, it ended up just below average and empty for me. Max the Impaler, Palm Harajuku, and Raku versus Magical Sugar Rabbits and Yuki Arai was pretty much just a waste of time, especially in particular for Rabbits and Arai here. It just played like a nothing match, as if it looked like it on paper. The trio structure never built any particular heat, maybe by TJPW standards, but the pacing here just stayed casual, and the match moved from section to section without a clear rise here. The Rabbits and Yuki Arai are the kind of wrestlers that can add focus to a match, but the layout here didn't really give them a lane to matter here. So the whole thing just came off just empty to me, instead of building to a bigger moment here. The timing stayed on one level until it was over, and it didn't leave anything besides the feeling that the show just spun its wheels again. So at 1.25 stars, it was just a bad match that just wasted everybody's time here. Arisu Endo versus Mirai for the International Princess title was really starting to cook here. And the frustrating part is that the match ended too early to fully cash into that type of build. The pacing here in this match finally picked up, and the structure started to connect, and the exchanges felt like they had a direction, but then the match just cut off right as it found its best gear. And that short timing kept this finish from feeling like a natural payoff to the climb here. I pretty much just wanted more minutes because the middle stretch was finally lining things up in a way that could have raised the closing run here. The match still held together enough to be solid, but it just stopped short of being a real impact here. So at 2.75 stars, it played as a solid title match that pretty much ran out of time. Uber Eats vs Haru Koshiro and Yuki Aino for the Princess Tag Team titles barely got out of first gear here. And that low gear made the whole title match feel smaller than what it should have been. The structure never showed a real escalation. The timing, I think, stayed safe, and the rhythm stayed low even as the minutes passed by. I was pretty much just kept waiting for a sharper transition or stronger sequence that could make this match feel central to the action here. But the match never found that shift. It was just a straightforward tag team title match that could have built more urgency here, but it stayed in that same lane from start to finish, and that late stretch didn't change the gear either. The finish here just felt like it just didn't come off of a real climb or climax. So at 2.25 stars, it was just average plus and a disappointing title match at that. Miyu Watanabe versus Tatsumi for the Princess of Princess title delivered a great match that this show desperately needed here. It was pretty much a true main event here that's gotten a lot of praise here. I thought the pacing stayed clean while it climbed, the structure never lost control of its direction, and I thought Miyu carried the match very well, and that leadership kept the timing and transitions clear from section to section here. Suzuki, I thought, followed the lead very well, and the exchanges were pretty sharp for the most part without losing the thread of the match here. I pretty much liked that each stretch added something instead of just filling time. And I also liked that the match never dropped back into a lower gear after it started rising, unlike the other matches. And pretty much after a show with a bunch of dull stretches, this match finally felt fully put together here. So at 4.25 stars, this was an excellent main event. TJPW's Tokyo Joshi Pro 26 was a show where too much of the show stayed dull or in low gear, and that kept this show from matching the baseline I was expecting going in. The opener I thought over-delivered on effort and structure here, but it dragged with a tag match and an Iron Man 4-way quickly pulling the pacing down. The Uma Princess Cup segment was just that, a segment, and the middle of the card added more matches that felt like not much of anything here. The trios match I thought was a waste of time with the Rabbits and Arai, which made the show even flatter, and the International Princess title match ended too early to give the show another real high point. The tag team title match never found another gear, and then you had the main event that ended up pretty much being just a heavy lifter by itself. So at a 5.0 out of 10, I don't recommend this show.